And hello, all, and welcome back to the Smoking Hour. This speaking is Vincent.
And this is Midnight.
Okay, and as you probably know, obviously from seeing this now or from our last episode, that this is audio only for at least for now. Maybe once I get a better internet connection and it doesn't take me 3 or 4 days, no lie, 3 or 4 days to upload a video, then we might go back to video. But most people just listen to this anyways, so it's going to be an audio podcast for now. As for where we've been this year, we've only had 2 episodes of the Smoking Hour this year. Well, this has been a rather busy year. I went back to work at a place I worked a few years ago, so I wasn't exactly on my own schedule anymore, working a lot more nights. I've really been trying to get caught up with this move. We're actually finally recording in my home studio today. Hadn't really done any recording of this outside or any short and smokies because every time I wanted to get out and smoke, it was pouring down rain, and which will also lead to why I had less cigars reviewed this year, but we'll get to that later. And yeah, so just a lot's been going on, and obviously the band.
Yeah, the band's been extremely busy this year. We have made more progress this year on getting this album recorded than we ever have, and still not got enough done. We are about, what would you say, 75% through that process, maybe?
Depending about what way you look at that, because me and D are already finished. So I mean that already is 40%.
Yeah,
And then
Lawless is finished all but one part of one song.
So, I'd say maybe roughly 70-75% done.
Yeah.
So we've made some good headway. Just, I wish we could have got a little more done. But again, it's just been so busy this year.
Yeah, and it's not only just having that done, there's been a lot of things in our personal lives and the personal lives around the people that are making the album. And it's been a lot of things outside of our control that has really led to all the delays we've had. It's kind of amazing we've got done as much as we have gotten done.
Yeah, and I mean, it's taken me, this is now December, of course, and I've been living in this house now since April, and it's taken me this long to finally get this studio up and running. You'll be able to see it soon on my main channel, probably soon on here too. But anyways, enough of what we've been doing. What we're going to get into today, it's Christmas time. Last year we talked about our top 5 favorite Christmas presents of all time. So, unfortunately, Christmas has become very material, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is materialism, because we are living in a material world, and Stephen is a material girl.
Guilty as charged.
And then, of course, we're going to get into our top 5 cigars of the year and our worst one, as we do at the end of every year. And, of course, today, as tradition, I will be smoking the Cigar Aficionado's #1 cigar of last year. This year, of course, is the Padron 1964 anniversary Torpedo in the natural variety.
And I'll be smoking the Hoya La Amistad Dark Sumatra by AJ Fernandez.
Yes, now, you might remember I've actually featured this cigar before, but, I'm not going to let Steven know anything about it. He's pretty much going into the cigar blind. He chose it, but I kind of want to try a little something here today. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and light into these cigars, and we'll get right into our discussion. So before we get into our real discussion for today, something I always like to do, really on any episode, but especially at the end of the year, is kind of catch up on what we've accomplished this year. We've already mentioned about getting a lot of the album done, but what's some things that you've really accomplished in the past year?
Well, in my never-ending job saga that has been followed on this series,
Constantly.
I think, let's see, where did we start on it? I hated Walmart, and then I went into liking Walmart. Well,
Well, I think when we first started, you weren't even at Walmart yet.
was I not?
I think you
Okay.
were happily unemployed for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, I might have been happily unemployed. Well, I went from liking Walmart to getting completely screwed over by them.
Hmm.
They cut my pay and switched
As they
departments
do.
and switched my departments, which I was still doing okay, but I also got bored because I just got moved back to being a cashier. And so I decided to just, I had an opportunity to try something totally new and probably out of my depth, but I've kind of been adapting. I got a job in heating and air, doing, initially, they started me in doing installs, and then they've moved me to service work. Um, in the next probably 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, will be getting EPA certified. I've been studying for that and should be by the end of January running calls in my own work van. So I took a pay cut initially to get this, but felt like it was better to move down to have more progression in the future than it was to stay at Walmart where I had kind of reached my ceiling.
Yeah,
And
just staying
plus,
stagnant.
staying stagnant, and I just wanted to try something new, really, something that would challenge me more than ringing up groceries. So
Well, as for myself, on the employment side of things, I'm pretty sure during the last smoking hour, I had already started my new job. DoorDash really didn't cut it anymore, especially for the price of gas. And my drone business is kind of slacking, especially with my internet connection here. It's really kind of hindered because I can't post my videos to Facebook anymore in a timely manner, for promotion. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of people might think that I'm not doing it anymore, but I'm still running. I've had a few clients this year, just not near as much. I went back to work at the resort I used to work, and I really like it. I really do like it there. I always did. COVID was the only reason that I really didn't go back for a while. But I kind of have my own schedule. Not really, but I mean, I have a set schedule that I like, and I can get some stuff done that I need to. Definitely moving in here has been a long, long process. We're still finding some old stuff we've got to get rid of, and because I inherited this house from my grandpa, so he died earlier this year, and he had a lot of stuff in here. So find a place for that, find a place for all our stuff, getting the studio set up. But it's safe to say I feel like I've accomplished something. Like you said when you first got here about going all out with my Christmas lights. I never got to do that where I was living last. I was
yeah,
renting. I just didn't really have that opportunity. Didn't get to do it. But that's something I used to do when I was living at home. We always went all out for Christmas lights. So I'm like, I'm in my own house. I'm going to do this again.
yeah,
And I've got my studio set up here. Uh, got a few little other things here and there. I am currently working on finishing writing songs for my folk project. I've got 2 albums worth of lyrics, but not all of them have music. And as I always like to talk about my travels, this past year didn't really get to anywhere new, really. I saw a few new things, but kind of went to a few favorite places of mine. Uh, I've not been to any new states this year, but I still had a really good time on my travels this year. Hopefully, next year, going to see some new ground again. But really, I've just been getting settled in. I mean, like we said, it's been a very busy year. I've been doing a lot, but I still feel like I have accomplished quite a bit this year, especially getting my parts done for the album. Really can't wait to hear what that's going to sound like.
yeah. And for anybody that's never recorded an album before, that's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's a huge undertaking when you're trying to record and have something you're going to be happy with forever on a 10 songs worth of material.
Okay, so getting into today's topic, though, it's Christmas time. At the time of recording this, we still got a couple weeks till Christmas, but it'll probably be a few days before Christmas when this finally goes up. And, you know, as we've gotten older, I'd like to think we know the meaning of Christmas. Of course, from our Christian backgrounds,
Mhm.
it's a day set aside to celebrate the birth of Jesus, not the day he was born on.
Yeah.
But you know, even to the rest of the world, I feel like it's just a good day to really get away from the rush of life. To be with your family, um, just spend time with the people you love. And it can be doing the things you love too. I mean, everyone has different Christmas traditions. We've talked on traditions before, things we do. And last year, of course, we talked about our favorite Christmas presents.
Yeah. Yeah, and you realize as you get older, I mean, the family that you get to see, I mean, you don't get to see them a lot of the year. The times you get to spend with them, the catching up, and really getting back to your roots, I think, is an important part of Christmas. People that were, I know for me, my extended family was a lot more present in my life when I was younger. So now any chance I get to see them is a lot more precious now that I'm older.
Yeah, and then to look at my situation, I've lost a little bit of family over the last few years. My brother, now I'm down to one grandparent left. And so, this time of year, it can be a little harder to think about, but especially because that was really the only time I saw my brother was holidays. And I've never really lived that far from home. So, I see the rest of my family on a regular basis. But, you know, like you said, when I was a kid, I saw my whole family a lot more. And you didn't really appreciate it as a kid,
Mm-mm.
though. I mean, obviously, you don't think. And that kind of goes into what you thought about Christmas as a kid. I think it's safe to say we both knew the real meaning of Christmas all our lives, but we didn't care about that as a kid. Let's be honest.
No, you're looking forward to
Um,
your presents.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Santa Claus coming, and that's why my favorite Christmas movie is A Christmas Story, because that really embodies what being a kid at Christmas is about. Is you have to get that present, that one toy, that one whatever. That's what you have to get. And that's all your mind is on. That's what the entire kid year revolves around is Christmas Day.
absolutely. As a kid, you're looking forward to those presents, and you're not taking time to appreciate the fact you're getting to see these family members and all, in which a lot of which by that time are probably getting older and they don't really occur to you. Um, my grandpa, he died when I was 4. That was a big hit on my family. Now my grandmother, she's 93. We believe she's getting the onset of dementia at this point. She can't really get around or have people over like she used to, or so my family doesn't even. Well, I think this will probably be the first year that we actually don't get together on Christmas, and it's a hard thing because we used to would have 60 people there on Christmas. I mean,
Dang.
we have a massive
Like
family.
that's legitimately 60 people.
We had to go to the church's community
Dang.
building one time because we couldn't fit them in her house anymore. You have her kids, which she had 4. They all had 3 to 5 kids apiece. Those all had 3 to 5 kids apiece. It just, and then, spouses and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It just expanded so much. And a lot of my family lives in, up near Roanoke, some near Sparta. My family's pretty spread out now and have branched off into their own traditions with their sides of the family. And, where the family got so big, it's just kind of got to where everybody's in separate corners now. Um, and I think that's been really hard for me this year because now that I'm older, the material things of Christmas really don't mean a lot. I've got my own money. I can get my own things and
Mhm.
stuff like that. What I really miss is the irreplaceable parts of Christmas, which is that family, which, this year it's going to be, I might see 6 or 7 of them where, if they just happen to come by sometime over Christmas weekend, whereas before it was like Christmas was a family reunion with all these different branches.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing. I mean, and even in my immediate family, I mean, my brother's had some legal issues and stuff like that, so I don't know if he'll be around for Christmas. And it's been is going to be very different this year.
Well, it's like, so I didn't really have a lot of cousins my age growing up. I had some distant ones, but I never saw them for Christmas. Um, but my first cousins, they never really come around for Christmas that were close to my age. But the ones who were more closer to my age, still a good bit younger though, were my nieces. And now, they're both in their 20s. They've got jobs, and they still come for holidays. They were both there for Thanksgiving, had their boyfriends with them. But it's just kind of hard to believe. Like, okay, I'm married now. Still don't have any kids yet. I would like to someday, but just kind of taking my time on that. And I still see a lot of my family for Christmas, a lot of the same ones, but it does feel different. My nephew Connor, he's really the only kid there is still at our Christmas gatherings, and I like sitting talking to him. He's a very smart kid. Like he will go on and on. He knows a lot more about, I mean, like computer stuff, like Raspberry Pi programming. This kid's 12 years old
Wow.
and he knows the stuff. And like I remember when the stuff was coming out, and I'm like, oh, okay, that that really makes my age come to existence. But yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't like getting presents. Of course I do. Everyone does. Everyone likes getting things. And I love giving presents. I that's some of the most fun I have at Christmas is trying to figure out what I'm going to give people, because I like to make it personal.
Hmm.
I don't like giving gift cards or just money, because it's like, it's very impersonal. I like to give something that I know is going to mean something to the person.
Yeah.
And that is where we're kind of getting into our main topic of the day of materialism. Um, I saw a video the other day that it was kind of talking about the effect Mr. Beast is having on youth. And I'm not going to say I don't like Mr. Beast. I watch his videos. I actually really like a lot of the stuff he does. He does a lot of good for the environment. He gives to charities. But it was kind of talking about how his, buying all these big extravagant things, going on all these trips, what is that doing to kids' minds? Like, seeing some influencer like this just spending all kinds of money, what is it doing to these kids, especially, who can afford that? Kids or adults who can
Yeah.
afford these things?
Yeah. And I think that's been not just an issue nowadays with guys like Mr. Beast, but I mean, even think of the celebrities when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, flaunting money has always been the flaunting money has always been the picture of success that you see in the world.
I mean, Ric Flair was my hero as a kid.
Exactly.
Watching him throw Rolexes to the audience. I mean, that's
Yeah. I mean, take somebody like Oprah giving away cars.
yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of times people want to blame influencers, but it's just a new platform for the same old shtick that's been going on for years and years.
Yeah. And now it also brings up a question though of, can materialism be good? Um, so look around you in my room here. I know this kind of sucks. That's not a video podcast anymore. Would really help matters, but look around you. I've got a good bit of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I need to put away. I've got no room for some of my things in this pretty small room. But a lot of the things I have aren't just, technology based. Like that's what everyone's after today. The newest technology, best phones, best games, best whatever. A lot of my material things are things that will last probably longer than me.
Hmm.
My, you know, guitars, guns, whatever. They'll last longer than I'll be here. It's something I can pass on.
Yeah. And a good form of, to expand on that point, a good form of materialism, I think, is things that will help people beyond you. So if you're really wealthy, if you invest in art or property or things like that that you can pass down that'll add wealth to your family. So it's not just you profiting, it's those that come after you. And also, aside from that, another good way to use the money and materialism thing is to not so much buy objects, but to buy experiences. Because at the end of the day, life is about experiences.
And that's, yeah. And I've said that plenty of times here. My trips, my traveling, I don't really invest a lot of money into things, but I do save up to take my trips because I have to make my getaways. And like this year, just the experience alone, some of these places. My last trip, nothing new. We went to mostly places we'd seen before, but we went to this town called Helen, Georgia, which is this Bavarian style village. My wife absolutely loved the place. I love it. And we also made a point that we're going to try not to eat at generic places. We're going to go ahead. We saved up a little extra money, so we'll go ahead and spend this on something nice. We ate at a Gordon Ramsay's place.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the experience, because I'll remember that through the years.
Yeah, I mean, not going to, your chain restaurants, places you could have around here, going out and finding new things, finding new foods. Life is too short to eat boring food.
Yeah, and it really something we used to kind of do as a band. We would all just go out to eat. We done that fairly regularly. I mean, maybe once a month or so. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this year too, we've just kind of
Well,
not really had the time.
we've lost a lot of we've lost a lot of band traditions this year for the sake of getting things
Yeah.
done, and it's a necessary but sad sacrifice. And I hope
Mhm.
that that's something as this album gets finished, we can get back to doing is the traditions we had.
Especially this time at the end of the year. I mean, uh, you know, Christmas time, I like to settle down. I don't like to be constantly running, doing everything, get my shopping done. And I want to settle down and just take this time to
Mm-hmm.
relax, keep up some of these traditions. And it kind of brings me to think about, you know, our Christmas traditions we've talked about before, and think back to our parents, the Christmases of their youths. Um, I just went hiking the other day with my cousin up the mountain where our family is from, and we were talking about how it's just one road up into this mountain, and that's it. There wasn't no other roads in or out, and or you could go up to the very top of the mountain. But come Christmas time, it snowed them in. They were there.
Yeah.
It was just them, like their family together. I mean, you had to have fun in different ways. I mean, obviously they didn't have the technology we do today. Now, my dad was actually the first person in the area to have a TV. My
Yeah.
my dad growing up, they were the first family, first house in all of their community to have a TV.
Yeah.
And so they actually had a few years they had a little bit of money to spend. But the way my dad always put it, they didn't spend money the rest of the year, but they would still go all out at Christmas. Any
Yeah.
money they had, they would blow it at Christmas time.
And to your point about them, getting snowed in and really spending time with each other. I mean, I've never been one. I'm usually a pretty big defender of technology. Um, I don't try to be someone that overly glorifies the past, but I think that is one thing that the older generations really had that I wish we did have today is being more in the moment. Because when they were there at Christmas, it was just about who was in that room with them. They had no other distractions. They had nothing else that was going on. They could slow down. They could actually live in that moment with their family and actually grow those bonds.
Mhm.
And I think that is a sacrifice we've made for the convenience of our modern lives.
And that is why I am pretty much against technology because, like I talked about last year on my main channel, when we were practicing down at the cabin to now, how there's something lost. I mean, when you have all this access to the outside world, you miss the connections that are right there in front of you,
Hmm.
the people. And that's something I miss about Christmas as a kid. Um, you know, my dad said they used to get like uh yeah, they were still, it was the days when you got apples and oranges in your stockings. But then, he got a guitar for Christmas one year, a bike, whatever. I mean, they
Hmm.
still get something nice, but it's not like today when all kids just want a new iPhone, new, iPad, whatever, a new game system.
Hmm.
And it's another way to shut themselves off from the family. And that's why I feel like they don't appreciate what they already have like we did. Now, and that does beg the question, did we know what we were missing? That was the theme on my main channel this year of what are you missing? We talked about that last time, settling down, taking time to just get out and enjoy the now. And I feel, I kind of wonder if kids today, when they grow up, if they're going to even have that same sentiment. Because my dad still does, they never really knew what they were missing
Yeah.
with, not having that much money. They thought, hey, Christmas time, when they got what they got, that was still just a huge deal. And that's the way it was for me too.
And I think the kids today will, I think they'll be more similar than we think because it ain't like we grew up technology less. I mean, we still had the game systems, we had the phones, we had, these kind of things. I mean, at least I know at a certain point we did, at least in our teenage years.
I did not. Yeah. I,
But
I,
I know a lot of people in my generation did, and we still have those same
yeah, I mean,
ways
now we
looking
are a
back.
few years apart.
Yeah.
Um, I, I'm going to show you something here. Okay, again, so obviously this is audio only, so none of you can see this, but I'll have Steven describe to you a few things. These are things I've dug out of my room in the last week here, getting my studio together, things I've had for years. Now, what is this?
This is a Tamagotchi. I have not seen one of these in forever.
Yeah, I got that in 97.
97. I would have been two.
Uh, some of you today might not even know what this is. It was just a little electronic pet that I think it's supposed to be like an alien or something. I don't know. And you had to feed it, take care of it, whatever. I've not. I'm sure the batteries are well corroded in here. I've not tried to, get it working again. But that was when I was 5 years old. Um, so that was huge to me. Like that was the epitome of technology when I was a kid. We had a Super Nintendo. That is to this day, that's still the most advanced console game system I have.
Yeah.
I never had anything newer. So I got that. All right, now this was not a Christmas present, but
The old school MP3 player, the Sylvania, it would appear.
that was my first MP3 player. This is the kind. Pull the cap off
Oh,
there.
yeah, you would have the USB drive that went directly into the computer to download your music.
Yep.
I had a Walkman version of this. I had a Walkman MP3 player.
Did not know that existed.
It did exist, and I still got it. It
Yeah.
is held together by tape, but still works if I could charge it.
I went through probably a half a dozen of these things because they didn't last no time. They took a AAA battery or maybe a AA, I don't remember. But they would just die after a while and kind of give out. But I just still kept it for, nostalgic reasons. Now, for my first ever cell phone that I received when I was 17 years old.
This be it's not a Nokia, but it looks like
it is a Nokia.
Oh, is it a Nokia track phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, little Nokia track phone, the old brick phone, with was that a 1x1 screen?
It's probably less than an inch. Yeah, it's probably less.
That, as opposed to mine, I had a red flip phone that I had for 3 or 4 years before I finally got a smartphone.
I never owned a flip phone. I had this phone. I got it when I was in high school, my senior year, because I was, starting to drive. So this was my mom's phone.
Mhm.
She gave it to me so I could call when I was wherever, and I took it to college with me. This was the only phone I had until I started working at Radio Shack. And my first Christmas there, I really didn't want one, but my boss kind of said you need to get some type of smart device. You work at Radio Shack, get a discount. You need to get you one. That way you can sell it better. So this is what I had my mom get me for Christmas. My first smartphone,
This is a Kyocera.
Kyocera.
Kyocera. It looks like a tiny knockoff iPhone. I mean, judging by the layout and shape, it looks like a knockoff iPhone 3G.
Okay, yeah, I can say that. This just had a plastic back. It was still back when you could get to your battery, still take your battery out of the phone. This phone was virtually indestructible. The battery is actually still pretty good in it. It was a garbage little phone, but it was my first smartphone. And, I was watching YouTube videos on here. It has one camera, one rear facing camera that I think is a 2 megapixel. And to put that into perspective, I had a crappy digital camera that was a 4.5 megapixel that was still better than this phone camera.
And for context, your new phone, how many megapixel?
20 some, I don't even remember.
Yeah, something crazy.
Yeah. You saying we had the technology, I mean, it was out there, yeah, but we didn't have it. I didn't even have internet until I think we finally got it, and maybe we got dial up, and I want to say 2006.
Okay.
And then we did not get high speed internet until I was out of college.
Well, for context to my point, my family was always early adopters of technology because my dad worked for IBM. He was always introduced to it. Dad had one of the first people I ever seen have a beeper.
And my dad had a pager.
Then my dad was the first person I ever seen that had a smartphone. He had the old school BlackBerry smartphone. Then we had internet in like '99. And
we couldn't even get internet here until the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I might be a little off. It was '99, not between '99 and 2001. Is when we got it. But we had satellite television. We done a lot of that. But even though we had the technology, we had more distractions than you did growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But we can both relate on a lot of the same memories and stuff like that. And I think even though kids today have these distractions, I feel like they'll look back on it similar to how we do, because when they get our age, the distractions and technology and things like that will be even more advanced than they are now.
And it even scares me. Thankfully, obviously Meta flopped, and good riddance to that. They're still going to try to shove it down our throats till it does do something. But, that just scares me, the fact of who would want to live in that kind of world? And obviously people don't. That's why it didn't take off. No one wants to, we want to experience
actual
the real
life.
world.
Yeah.
Now kind of touching back though on our parents. And this was even something prevalent when I was a kid. And I don't know if you would even remember this. The Sears Wishbook.
Sears Wishbook. I do not remember that.
So, it was a Sears catalog every year. And, Sears really don't even exist anymore. But they put a catalog out every year at Christmas time called the Wishbook. And that was just something, looking through that as a kid, all the toys, everything in there. And that probably really started to fuel the materialism in America, because that was the first on-demand service. You obviously had to order it. It was a few weeks before it'd come in. But, when Sears catalogs started coming out, you could get everything then that you couldn't get at your local hardware store, your local general store.
Yeah.
You could get whatever. Sears catalog sold houses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And now granted, the wish books were generally more, there was clothes, toys, household electronic stuff. But that's just a memory from when I was a kid, just going through those books year after year. That's when I knew it's Christmas time. As soon as that book come in, because I had no frame of time at that age, but once I knew that wish book was in, okay, it's Christmas. And I just looked through that book every single day, make sure I didn't miss anything. Then I would show my parents certain things, like this is what I want Santa to get
Yeah. Yeah.
me. And sometimes I get stuff out of it. It was kind of hit and miss. A lot of the stuff in there was very overpriced. It was Sears, go figure. Back then, Sears was pretty expensive at one point.
At the time, it was either order something from Sears or hope they have it at Walmart in your town.
Yeah, and back then, we had a Walmart. It wasn't a super center at that point, but the Walmart was so small that we really didn't even go to Walmart up until it became a super center and it, started getting a lot more stuff. We went to Kmart and Sears and stuff like that because really Walmart was just kind of this place then. I mean, it was just another store.
Yeah.
Now it's you know this huge conglomerate of between them and Amazon. Like many people don't go anywhere else for shopping.
Mm-hmm.
I still obviously do. I try to look into other places to find something more personal than literally some crap I could get at Walmart.
Yeah.
But it also kind of brings up thought from earlier this year, something else I'd found. Do you remember when I showed you the Rockabilia catalog?
I do, and I remember when you showed me this because when me and Vincent both grew up, huge rock fans living in the middle of nowhere. And I did not know Rockabilia existed and wish I had because I would beg my parents until I got my license to take me to Hot Topic to get shirts and stuff like that. And I didn't actually go to my first concert until I was 16. And I always wanted these band shirts and I always wanted to have that rock and roll look, and I never could. And little did I know that Rockabilia existed, and I could have had all this stuff then. Anyway, continue.
Well, see, Hot Topic, closest one to us was in Winston, which is a little bit farther of a drive for me than for you. And we just never went to the mall down there that much. We'd go maybe once or twice a year, so I rarely ever even went to Hot Topic. But the thing about Rockabilia, it was kind of interesting that I don't know how you even got the catalog. It was always this thing passed around. Like our drummer D gave me my first catalog, and I passed one on to someone else, and that's kind of how it went. Like it just passed on person to person, and it was kind of like this club. It felt like just this little secret club that only the select few knew about.
Yeah. And it wasn't even a thing in my school. I didn't even know it existed because, well, in my school, the only reason that I made friends in middle school was because there was like 6 of us that listened to rock and metal. And we just all kind of formed right in together. Me and Jordan from Push Button and former Midnight Massacre singer Stefan, and my buddy Jacob Lee and Justin Norman and the guys that were in the first band I was ever in. We just all kind of fell in together because we were the only ones listening to it, and we had no access to the music. YouTube was new. We'd find stuff every now and then on there. We talking about it just like being a club, it was like we had our own little club, and all of our things that we knew about was just everything we could scrape to find back then. Most of my early bands that I listened to, I discovered because of Guitar Hero. Because it was just one of the only places I knew to find them, other than what my dad had raised me on.
It's kind of funny you even mentioned Guitar Hero. I was watching a video about that last night, how that whole phase of Guitar Hero and Rock Band lasted 5 years and gone. Just don't exist anymore. And I kind of didn't even I never played them. I've got my own story about that, why I never did and never will. But I didn't realize that they just wasn't doing it anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
But if you look around my room, this Kiss poster behind you and this ACDC poster, and then some of these that are in the floor still that I don't have room for. That was all Rockabilia stuff. I ordered posters, shirts, everything out of there. And that was kind of my teenage equivalent to the Sears Wishbook. Again, it's fueling that materialism that that's all I have my mind on was
Mm-hmm.
just looking all the stuff I'm gonna get, these shirts, this accessories, whatever. Me and D would sit on the bus every time after he had got me onto them. I was getting my own catalogs. As soon as the new ones come in, we'd have ours on the bus. Typically we'd both end up having it with us, but at least one of us would have that catalog. We'd go through every page, like circle up, getting
Yeah,
that this time, getting that, go through the posters, whatever. And Musician's Friend was another thing like that.
we were big on Musician's Friend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a guitar center in Greensboro, and we never went to Greensboro. Like we only went. I was even saying the other day, when I was living at home, we only went to Greensboro, like my family, maybe 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, even with my family, we never went to Greensboro or Winston hardly because my parents made it sound like that Winston or Greensboro was like an 8-hour drive,
Well, you see,
but it wasn't.
we would go to Winston fairly regularly, like once a month. We just never went to the mall because my dad was just didn't want to deal with the traffic and people over there. But Greensboro, we would stop there maybe on our way back from the beach, but just to take a trip down there, I didn't go to Guitar Center my first time until my senior year, I think, of high school. And we would just go to pawn shops, Shannock's Pawn Shop in King. We'd go there a lot. But that Musician's Friend was another thing. I would just sit through that, look at all the guitars I wanted. And of all of them, I've got a couple that I used to look at. I've got me a Les Paul and an SG.
Hmm.
Then a lot of them I just kind of phased myself out on. I wanted them. Then I was like, it's not really that big a deal. But that's what you go through in life. I mean, that's how we're kind of programmed to want all of these things. But like I said earlier, isn't necessarily a bad thing. These guitars, these are things I can pass on. I mean, my Martin here, that's actually my dad's. He gave it to me. And some of these, that old K banjo up here on the wall, that's a 50s model. I bought that I bought third hand really. But these things last for years.
Oh yeah,
Some of these are well older than me and they'll continue to be well older than me. And obviously we talk about nostalgia a lot on the show and all my channels. But some of these possessions that we even bought back then, like my guitars, for example, I can tell you the story behind every single one of these instruments in here. Now, some of them, like my dobro and my new banjo, I just got them this year because for just I wanted them. But some of these older ones, my Mitchell acoustic, I just got before I started college because I wanted a cheaper guitar in case anything happened to it. It wouldn't be that much out. I was just pining over a Les Paul. Like I was obsessed with them, and found one. They used to have this little trading post leaflet you'd get at stores, and they don't even exist anymore. I mean, I'm sure they're elsewhere, but this was kind of a local thing. And you would just call in this number, say, "All right, I've got this for sale," and I think you might pay like $2 or $3 to put it in there. It was like just a classified thing. And I saw one in there for a Les Paul one day in Walnut Cove. That very day, I had some money saved up. We drove down there and bought it. All of these things can take me back to a certain place in time. Just like all of these things I showed you earlier, my old phones, MP3 players, all of these posters just bring me back to being in high school. Again, yeah, it's material things, it's materialism. A lot of the stuff can be replaced, but the memories can't be replaced. And that's why sometimes it's not so bad. Uh, when you're gifted things, it might not mean much. It might be, whatever, okay. But it's the fact that it was a gift that, like we said last year, our top 5 Christmas presents, the majority of those meant something very significant to us, and a lot of that shaped our personality over the
Hmm.
years.
Absolutely. Yeah, and talking about things that bring you back to another time. I've mentioned all this before. I'm not obsessed with it like some people of my generation are, but I've always enjoyed playing video games. And like recently, a few years back, I had got some money problems, and I sold a bunch of my old game systems. Well, I started buying. I bought a PlayStation 3 because I found one for real cheap, and been playing a lot of the games that I had as a kid. Um, when I was 13, 14. And it's crazy. I mean, while games are so much more advanced now, I can boot up one of those games that I played as a kid, spend a lot of times on it, especially after my parents split, because I played a lot more games at that point because I had nothing else to do. But I can boot up one of those, and it takes me back to being that kid again. It takes me back to that space in my mind, and it's just a material thing. It's something I picked up for $5 at a thrift store, but it means so much more to me than that. It's even though there's better things out there now, you can't replace that feeling it gave you. And I think that's a good part about having these objects. They're placeholders in time.
Mhm. And you just saying that kind of brings to mind. I said a lot of this stuff is replaceable. I mean, a lot of it is, some is not. But one thing that's definitely not replaceable is pictures and videos. That's why, like, my cameras were so special to me because I was always taking pictures everywhere I went from when I was a kid on up. I started out with these little cheap point and click 35 millimeters up to some higher end 35 millimeter cameras, all film. And then I got me a flip video camera. I started recording video. I started getting digital cameras, my phones, and that's kind of what turned into these YouTube channels. Always recording because okay, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of followers on any of my channels, but I want to keep these memories for myself too,
Yeah.
and for others if they want to join in. But it's like anything I film with the band, I want to keep it to where we can all see it because like, I shared with you some videos the other day that I kind of would like to forget. But, videos from 6 years ago, just after Steven had joined the band, and the cringiness of, oh, yeah, oh, yeah,
Everything we said.
we're going to have a couple videos out soon, and this is our first single. We don't even play that song anymore. Never was released, thankfully.
Yeah.
But there's certain things I would like to forget, but at the same time, it's history. You shouldn't forget it. You need that memory there so you don't forget it.
Absolutely. And it shows your growth. It shows where you came from, because if you have nothing of where you came from, where you are means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yes, it was super cringy, but some of those old videos are just some of my favorite things to look back on.
Well, it's just like old home movies from when you were a kid. You don't want to watch them because you know how cringy they were. You don't want to see them with anybody else. But when you do take that time to go back and watch them, see how different things were, like even just like your surroundings. I know there's some from here when I was a kid, and none of this looked the same. And it's like, I love seeing those old things because that goes back to what we are saying earlier. Things that, you can pass down the memories. These pictures and videos, if you keep them up, they'll last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we should be holding on to. All your photos, all your videos. I had a photography teacher in college. He made a remark one time, kind of scared me. He said, pretty soon, it's going to be just like it was in the Civil War days, where you have one family picture on the wall, and that's it. Because everything was going to digital. No
Mm-hmm.
one prints pictures anymore. When I was a kid, we had pictures all over the wall, of the family, whatever. Nothing now. Me and my wife have a few up here. There's a few I took with my drone, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's all digital now, and that stuff can be lost. I mean, lost media is a huge thing. You need to keep up with these videos, put them somewhere, let them be shareable so they're not lost to time.
Yeah, I mean, hard drives are a great thing. I mean, to have it saved somewhere, because I remember when I was a kid, my mom had 5 or 6 boxes, cardboard boxes full of pictures.
Oh yeah, and
I
I've got
mean,
that whole box under you
yeah,
full of pictures. Yeah.
yeah, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures that dated back to the 80s and 70s. I mean, and it's history, it's family history. It's I mean, it might not mean something to the rest of the world, but to if I ever have kids and my sister's kids and the next generations of the family, that's going to mean something to them, and where these pictures you're posting on Facebook might be hard to believe for some folks, but I don't believe 10, 15 years from now that Facebook will, I mean, it won't be here in the same format that it is
I
now.
don't think so either. I think honestly, like I said earlier, they'll try to push to that meta,
Mm-hmm.
and boom, gone.
It will, because the meta thing is just the most recent iteration of them trying to build a virtual world for people to live in. They started it with Second Life back in what 2000,
Yeah.
2001. They've tried it with VR. I mean, that's barely caught on at all. I think people at the end of the day, as much as we like technology, we still want that wall. We want the wall between the technological world, the online world, and our actual real world.
Mm-hmm. Because that is the thing when it comes to the virtual world. Well, there is no material possession there,
Mm-hmm.
so that is an argument. Maybe we are moving away from materialism. You still need the materials to get there, but that's why I kind of am. It's still in my old ways of like, yes, these might be material things around me. A lot of them will pass away with time. They won't last forever, but this is real.
Yeah.
These are things, my guitars, whatever, are things I can touch, my records.
Mm-hmm.
These are things I can touch, I feel, interact with. It's not something that just exists in this fantasy plane.
Yeah.
This is real.
And to that point, and you can probably tell me who, because I can't remember, but there was a famous quote about the future where it says, "In the future, you will own nothing and you will be thankful."
And I can't remember who it is either.
And it seems like that is what a lot of technology companies are pushing for. Like, you know, heard even something as simple as a home video surveillance system. I had one of my friends telling me yesterday they had bought one for their house. And to save videos on it, they spent $300 on this system. To save videos on it, you have to pay $3 a month per camera.
Poof.
So, yes, you bought the camera, but you do not own what that camera captures.
Mm-hmm.
You rent everything nowadays.
Well, it's just like there's no, you know, extra storage on phones now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could say it's all online. I have already had to pay. I've had to upgrade my Google subscription 3 times now because I keep using up space.
Yeah.
Because again, I take pictures of everything. Now I'm not sitting here. I'm saying I'm taking pictures of my food for Instagram, but I take pictures of memories. I mean, things I don't want to forget. Because again, these are things that it all takes me back to another time. It's things I can pass on. It's things that are irreplaceable. So, kind of back to the original point. Yes, materialism can be a horrible thing. It has become a horrible thing in this world. But there are aspects of it I think we should cherish.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that'll about wrap up this discussion today. But now, time to get into what a lot of you here on this channel are here for, our top 5 cigars of the year and our worst. But before we get into that, I'm just going to go over my stats from last year. Obviously, right now, I don't have any of the old smoking hours uploaded onto this channel. That's going to take a little while. Last year, I reviewed good bit more cigars. I had like well over 30 last year. I think it was almost 40 cigars I reviewed last year. This year just didn't really have the time. But last year my average was 87.4. And that's actually gone up this year. Now I only rated 14 cigars this year, but my average this year actually went up to 88. So slightly better, but not really a lot. I had a lot of duds this year. I felt like a lot just teetered right around that 88 mark, which is above average for me. My old average was right around 85. So that's pretty good, but nothing really stood out as much, I didn't think, at least as it did last year. Because last year I had quite a few over 90. But last year my worst was a Rocky Patel vintage 1990 that got a score of 73. Now my lowest this year was only an 80. So last year that really brought that average down with that. Now my best last year was of course the Hoya de Monterey Epicure number 2 that scored a 95. That was the Cuban, and I've only smoked one more since then, and it was just as perfect. Didn't rate that one. I kind of want to go back and rate another, see if it can get just slightly higher. But that one got a 95. And last year's number one cigar of the year, or I should say, the number one cigar of 2020 for Cigar Aficionado, was the EP Carrillo Pledge Prequel, and I gave it a 94. So that actually became my number 2 cigar of last year. And really want to see what this one's going to come out to today. This Padron. Don't think it's going to quite get that high, but we'll see once it comes time for the rating. And the rest of my stats for this year, I had only 5 with a score of 90 or above. And of course, those will be my top 5. Average of the year was 88. My most common manufacturer this year was Tabacalera Fuente, followed by my father. Smoked quite a bit of those this year. So finally, though, to get into our best and worst of the year, let's go ahead and knock out our worst cigar of the year. So take it away, Stephen.
All right. I also have not rated nearly as many cigars this year. But my worst was actually really surprising for me because I thought it would be one that I would love. But it was the Romeo and Julieta 1875 Connecticut.
Okay.
It really got knocked down on the draw. It was a very loose draw, which drives me crazy. Burn was bad. I mean, it was very uneven. It was cracking on me and kind of falling apart. I'm wondering if I just didn't get a bad one, or if it had maybe been a bad spot in my humidor or got dried out. I'm not exactly sure. Flavor was okay. I mean, it wasn't a bad flavor. It just didn't have a lot of it. They got points knocked off for that, and the body, it was just like I say, it was kind of bland. It ended up with a 78. Your typical Connecticut flavors of nut and cream. Overall, it was a very disappointing cigar. What about you?
So my worst cigar of the year, I actually featured this on the channel in Short and Smoky, was from Tabacalera Fuente, was the Arturo Fuente Casa Cuba Double Cinco. The same line of cigars, but a different size. I think actually made Cigar Aficionado's number 5 last year. So I was excited to try this one, but the flavor was really nothing, had a very weak body, and the burn was horrendous on this cigar. I I finished the whole thing, but it took me way too long to smoke this short little cigar, and it only got, like I said, an 80 for me. So could be worse, but I still think that 80 was even being generous with the cigar. Probably more along the lines of a 77 or 78, but hey, I'll give them a couple extra points there.
It's really ironic that our worst 2 was 2 of our favorite manufacturers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I
some,
love Romeos, and I know you like Arturos. I mean, we typically I'm a very big Arturo fan.
yeah, that's just the way it goes sometimes. And I feel like that was kind of my thing this year. I love my father's cigars. The majority of the ones I smoked this year, not so hot.
Yeah.
But to go into my number five, best cigar this year was one from Rocky Patel, who was my worst of last year.
I've rarely smoked a good Rocky in my experience,
Um,
but
so this one was actually the Rocky Patel Havana Fills exclusive. Havana Fills is a cigar lounge and shop in Greensboro. I was just in there one day before a show, kind of wanted something different, something I hadn't had. So I found this. Oh, it's a lounge exclusive. Never had that. Absolutely love this. Almost perfect scores across the board. My flavor and enjoyment, all perfect tens. And then, of course, I knocked a little bit off for the burn. It had a little bit, kind of a wonky burn, if I remember correctly. And the construction was a little bit off. But still, a solid 90 for the Rocky Patel Havana Fills exclusive.
and my number five of the year was and I always have a hard time pronouncing this, so forgive me if I butcher this name. Salud Amor Euroa Pestas,
Okay.
I think is how you pronounce that.
Sure. Why not?
We were going to go with it. I'm really white. It scored an 89 for me, mostly because of the body of it. There were so many different flavors I was getting off of that cigar. In my notes here, I had notes of cinnamon, dark chocolate, nutmeg, and toast on the finish. It was just a very complex flavored cigar. The construction was good; it held together well. It was just the burn was terrible, which knocked it down.
And moving into my number four was actually my introduction into the Davidoff line of the Winston Churchills. This is the Winston Churchill Petite Corona. Um, I'd been kind of hesitant on trying one of these because of the price point. But I thought, okay, this one's $12. Now it was a small cigar, but in that tiny cigar, it packed such a flavor punch. I was always kind of skeptical that people said smaller cigars will typically have a better flavor. I never really believed that, but this one kind of changed my mind. Um, Again, near perfect scores in a lot of places. Uh, had a 9 for flavor, a 10 for body, and really where it lost points was the draw. I had to knock a few off on that, and the price point, in all honesty. If it hadn't been for that, I would probably have given it even higher. But $12 for this tiny, tiny little cigar, I felt was a bit much. But still, scored a good solid 91 for the Davidoff Winston Churchill Petite Corona.
My number four was a cigar that was my white whale for a long time. I looked for it forever. Vincent can attest to this. It was the Arturo Fuente Opus X. It got a 90 for me. I had burn issues with it. It was a smaller cigar, and it was very expensive because those cigars are expensive because they're rare. But it had a great
Quote unquote rare. It's a
yeah,
marketing thing,
it
but
is a marketing thing, but it was special to me. I was looking forward to it because I'm an Arturo fan. And like I said, I had burn issues, but the flavor was really good. I like the flavor a lot. Slightly weaker than I typically go for in my cigars, so it got 1 point knocked off for that. But the body, a lot of flavors in that cigar. Like you said about smaller cigars, it seems to be true. But the overall of 90 for me was ultimately disappointing because I was hoping it would be as good as some of those Cubans we had.
mhm.
But it turned out to be a little disappointing, but still ended up as my number four of the year.
And we both smoked those on the same day. We smoked them New Year's Day of this year, and if I remember correctly, I think mine only maybe got like an 88 or so.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of disappointed too. It was my first one, and I was let down. But it's whatever. I wasn't really overly expecting it to blow me away, but again, for that price point, you think it ought to.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that sometimes affects your view of the cigar too, because you're holding it to a higher standard.
So my number three now was once again an introduction to me to the La Palina line. Was the La Palina Mr. Sam. Once again, I purchased this at Havana Phil's the day before a show. Just kind of sitting around, wanting something new, and tried this there, and was blown away by this cigar. Decent little price point on it. It did have some burn issues, so that's where it lost a couple points. And the flavor wasn't exactly my favorites that I like to get in a cigar, but the body so much made up for it. Like this was such a complex cigar. If I just to read a few notes off here, I remember there was pepper, earth, spice, caramel, dark coffee, cedar, fruit, sweet spice, cocoa, cherry, and I had these floral notes with almost the smell of the beach on the retrohale. Like I could smell salty ocean air. And I just thought it was such an incredible body on the cigar. Again, didn't quite hit on all my favorite flavors, but close enough, and got a good 92 for the La Palina Mr. Sam.
My number three is from the maker that got me into cigars. It was from Camacho. I have not had a Camacho on my list in a good bit now, but it was the Camacho Corojo. I think is how you pronounce that. It got a 91 for me. Its draw was perfect. Its burn, construction, it was a very well made cigar. It got tens across the board for that. Um, the strength was right where I wanted it. It's a pretty strong cigar. Um, I took out for the body because it didn't have a lot of flavors, but the flavors it did have, I really liked, and they were done well. It was had notes of pepper, which I think is really how they're branded for those. It had the notes of pepper and a light sweetness on the end. So it really got knocked down for me as for the amount smoked. I did kind of end it a little early because it didn't have a lot of body. I just got bored with it after a while. But I think in a smaller cigar than what I had, that would have been a very, very good choice and would have been higher on my list.
All right, so my number two was actually my first rated cigar of the year. I actually smoked this at the end of last year, but it was after our top five, and featured this on the channel. This one was gifted to me by good friends of ours, good friends of the band, the Garner family. This one really blew me away. My first, once again, a lot of these were my first cigars of these lines. This was my introduction to the Ashton line, the Ashton Cabinet number 7, also from Tabacalera Fuente. You can go back and watch that video. Uh, Perfect burn, perfect draw, near perfect construction, great flavor. Didn't quite hit on all my favorites, but this was it's a Connecticut shade wrapper, so it's a little lighter body. Doesn't always hit my favorite flavors, but I love Connecticut's, and they're just good, simple cigars, ones you really don't have to think a lot about, not too complex. But I absolutely love the cigar. For a Connecticut, this is the way to go. And they are somewhat pricey, but this one was a gift, so I didn't have to worry about that. And the Ashton Cabinet number 7 finished with a 92 for me.
And with my number two cigar of the year, I've got a Diesel Whiskey Row Sherry Cask. This cigar was fantastic as far as flavor goes. For some people, it would have been even more so than me. I did knock down just one because I typically don't like floral, but it wasn't floral front, so I didn't knock off too much. It was I got notes of cherry, bourbon, and I remember a distinct sweetness in the cigar, and I think that comes from being aged in the whiskey barrels. The really good construction, burn, and great strength on the cigar. It got a 93.
Okay. And now for my number 1 of the year. Now, again, we'll rate our cigars we're smoking today, and I'll see if mine should happen to fall into that top 5. But at least so far, I think it's pretty safe to say my number 1 of the year is once again from the Arturo Fuente family, The God of Fire by Don Carlos. Now, I actually featured this. This was the first short and smoky on the new channel. So you can go back and watch that one. I was in love with this cigar. Now, once again, I did not pay for this. My supervisor at work gifted this to me. So thank you, Christy, for that. And thank you to the person who left it in their room. These cigars retail for $27. I did not pay that, thankfully, again, but probably would not have bought it at that price point. But for $27, perfect strength, flavor, body, perfect draw, perfect construction. Smoke output was a little light, so knocked the point off there. And the burn, it went out a couple times on me, so an 8 for burn. But almost everything else that matters was nearly perfect. And to hit on some of those notes again, heavy notes of chocolate and coffee, cream, toast in there, a little bit of pepper on the finish, and there was some, buttery cream in there, notes of toffee, nougat, cherry, fruit, really light earth, some very faint floral notes, salted caramel, wood, leather, just incredible body, incredible flavor, and got a 94 for me. If I could get my hands on another one of these, I think it could get even higher. Because I remember there was a little nick in the foot, and I think that's what kind of made the burn go a little crazy to begin with. Again, I don't know what the previous owner of the cigar, how they might have stored it. I let it age for about 5 months before I smoked it. But these cigars are actually pretty rare. There's only a certain select number made each year, and this was actually the 2018 edition. So this might have been sitting in his humidor since 2018. And then I smoked it without knowing, its rarity and all this. So now I got to get my hands on one and, let it age for 5 years. But again, a 94 for the God of Fire by Don Carlos.
And with my number one of the year, and ironically, the one I am smoking today, the Hoya La Amistad Dark Sumatran by AJ Fernandez. This cigar has been fantastic. The burn has been perfect this whole time. I haven't had to relight. It has been even. Um, I did knock off a little bit at the beginning because the draw was loose, but that tightened up about midway through. The flavor is I'm getting the flavor I'm getting strong dark chocolate notes, slightly bitter but in a good way. And notes of coffee, a little bit of leather in there as well. The flavors really haven't changed all the way through, which I consider a good thing, but I did knock off a little bit for body on that because it stayed that consistent. Um, this cigar is coming out to a 96 for me. And to add on to that, that would make it the highest rated cigar I have ever rated. Still wouldn't say it's better than the Cubans, but the Cubans rated lower mostly because of where we were smoking them at the time. It was really bad conditions. The flavor doesn't hold up to those, but this is one of the best cigars I've ever smoked.
All right, and as for what I smoked today, the Padron 1964 Anniversary Torpedo in Natural, the number one cigar according to Cigar Aficionado of 2021. Did it break into my top five? Let's see. I had to knock a point off for the appearance because it was a very veiny cigar. Um, the draw was very tight in the beginning. It had a plug. It's a torpedo. This is a common issue with them. But I cut it down what I thought was far enough. Still very tight. I eventually did cut it down farther, and it opened up more. But I did have to knock off points for the draw. The burn was actually completely fine. Knocked a couple points off for construction because of that knot. Smoke output, not so great. The strength was just where I like it to be. But let's get into the flavors and body. It wasn't a very complex cigar, not as much as I would like at this price point of $19. Um, but some of the flavors, very, very peppery all the way through, almost burning my tongue. There was some wood, some chocolate in there, and some leather. Now, into the second third is when I think it really opened up and got really good flavor, especially after I cut it again. Getting notes of fruit, some floral notes, cream, sweet spice, chocolate. Then into the final third, that overabundance of pepper came back. Very earthy, very leathery, and on the very end, some very bitter notes of a Sharpie. Yes, a Sharpie, a permanent marker. That's what I was tasting on the end of the cigar. And for $19, nah, I'm sorry. That just don't cut it for me. Um so I did have to knock off a few points for the price, definitely a few for the flavor and body. So total score for the Padron 1964 Natural Anniversary Torpedo, an 82. So almost one of my worst cigars of the year. And it kind of happens that way. It seems back and forth. The first year we done this, it was the aging room, whatever. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I thought that one was awful. I hated that cigar. Now last year from EP Carrillo, loved it. Became my number two. This one not so much. But to get into the reason I told Steven yesterday, decide what you want to smoke, and I'll look up all the information on it. I wanted him to go in without any bias to this cigar, not knowing anything. Little did I know he chose one that I reviewed, one of the first cigars I ever actually reviewed back in 2020, that I gave a 93 to.
Okay.
I believe it was my second highest rated that year. I absolutely love this cigar, the Hoyo Le Amistad. I love this cigar. But I didn't want him to know that. I want him to figure it out for himself. Because to go back to an earlier point about, when we were kids, did we know what we were missing? Did our parents know what they were missing? After seeing years of like, okay, this is what's going on in the outside world, all this technology, all these things. When you don't know certain things, I feel like you appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Now, this cigar was supposed to be the number one cigar of last year that I smoked. I didn't care for it. And again, it comes with that hype. When they hype these cigars up, lots of times I'm let down, just like the Opus X, like the number one a few years ago, where I just told you about. A lot of these so high rated cigars, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. But I think that kind of proved the point that you went in blind.
And very similar ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It it's like with the Opus X, I'd had these expectations of it would be, life changing, and it wasn't. This one, I just I went in my humidor and looked at the ones I got, and I thought, you know what, that one looks good. We'll give it a shot. Mm-hmm. And with no expectations, I don't think I judged it as harshly as I would have if you had talked it up to me.
Okay. So, just goes to show, don't always listen to people's ratings on cigars. Again, this is all personal. You might hate that cigar, you might love the one I'm smoking. But again, just go in with your own opinion on these things. Don't worry about the rest of the world. And just like, these material things, enjoy the things you have. They might be treasures to you. But don't worry about what everyone else is doing in the world. All these people buying up the most expensive things, the latest, greatest technology. Just do you. Just worry about yourself, worry about what you have, enjoy the things you have, and just enjoy your life in general that way. So that'll about do it for today. Now, as for what's to come next year, naturally, this is a brand new channel pretty much. All of our cigar related content will now be here on the Cigar Lounge instead of the Vincent Raines official page. Now, don't go unfollow that page. I'm still going to do all my travel stuff on there, but due to certain YouTube restrictions, I just moved the cigar stuff to here. And I think it'll do better in the long run. More people who just want to see my cigar stuff, they'll come here. So we're going to try our best to have a lot more smoking hours next year. Again, this year we're just so crazy, so busy. Didn't really have the chance. More short and smokies, of course. I'm going to try to get Steven in on some of those too. And we're going to kind of want to do some fun things next year on short and smoky. Try some cigars we would never really dream about smoking or rating.
Yeah.
But just kind of do some different things. I want to get to some more lounges, do some more on location things, and really want to try to make the most of next year, smoke a lot more cigars than I did this year.
Yeah, for next year, I definitely want to rate more cigars. I think I rated 8 this year. So, I mean, it was a very, it, wa- they were, it was a, there was not as much variation in my list as I would like for there to be. But hopefully next year we can be more focused and bring you all some more well researched list.
All right. So, again, just want to thank you all for joining me this year here on the Smoking Hour and, of course, on Short and Smoky. Thank you to all those who have come to the new channel. I hope you'll all subscribe, stick around, and see what more we have to offer. Other than that, I believe that's all for today. So I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in the next year.